Thank you, Mark, for that very gracious and generous introduction. Brian and Mamadou, Sidwell faculty, trustees, parents, families and friends, other distinguished guests, and most of all, to you, Sidwell graduates of the class of 2024. Congratulations. It is such an honor to be with you on this momentous day. As the mother of two daughters, ages 19 and 17, who are here today, feeling deeply relieved that I was not asked to be their graduation speaker, it has felt like a particularly daunting proposition to speak to a group of graduating high school seniors. I know how smart and insightful you are, and how much people my age have to learn from your generation. And so my goal is less to attempt to impart wisdom and more to offer some views from farther down the life path as you enter this next incredibly exciting stretch of yours. The last time I attended a Sidwell graduation was my own, yes, 37 years ago, thank you, Mark. That spring, the music of Whitney Houston, Madonna, and Michael Jackson blared from the radio. Senioritis had hit full swing by the last week of classes, when, as part of the sadly now defunct Camp Sidwell tradition, we pitched our tents on the Wisconsin Avenue field, which was grass then, stayed up most of the night, and went to our last day of classes in our pajamas. Leading up to graduation day, we finished our senior projects, which for my group meant spending more than a little time doing on-site research on the Chesapeake Bay, including hanging out on my friend Megan's family sailboat. During our graduation ceremony, all of which took place outside, we were distracted by the cicadas flying around and occasionally landing on our heads. It was the kind of hatch that happens only every 17 years, and otherwise our minds were largely occupied by anticipation of an upcoming week of unchaperoned fun and general debauchery at Rehoboth Beach. I am sure today your minds are full of much loftier thoughts. And parents, I'm sure Beach Week is not the way it used to be. At that time, there wasn't much happening in the world that regularly grabbed our attention. The Soviet Union maintained a blanket of oppression across Eastern Europe, but that had been true since we could remember. The biggest scandal unfolding in Washington was Ronald Reagan's Iran-Contra affair, which many of you probably haven't even heard of, and seems almost quaint compared to, say, being a convicted felon who incited a violent mob to attack the US Capitol. In the 80s, Republicans and Democrats disagreed, but also debated and occasionally found common ground. Winters were still reliably cold, often snowy, even here in Washington, and the weather was mostly predictable. This is not to suggest that everything was rosy. Racism was more tolerated. Not only was there no gay marriage, but there was much less openness to being anything but straight and cisgender. Apartheid persisted in South Africa, and we now know that many of the seeds of our current social and political divisions were being sown. But there wasn't that same sense of constant global crisis that we experience today. And there certainly was not the same level of awareness of the world's challenges among young people getting ready to head off to college. You all carry the news of the world with you in your pockets, and so you are familiar with the headlines that recount strife and injustice in all of its many forms. An ongoing war in Gaza with devastating loss of lives, a resulting college student protest movement that has engulfed some campuses in ways unseen since the anti-war protests of the late 1960s. An upcoming election, the first you get to vote in, featuring the two oldest presidential candidates in history, one of whom says he will be dictator only for a day, claims his candidacy is ordained by God, and has a plan to deport 20 million undocumented people who he claims are poisoning the blood of this country. A politics so fraught that civil and constructive discourse on any topic is a rarity. A new wave of efforts to dismantle decades of progress in advancing civil rights, women's rights, and LGBTQ rights. And the great backdrop to all of this the defining challenge of our time that is different in scope and scale and will deeply impact the lives of each and every one of you, our rapidly unfolding planetary crisis. As you are aware, our use of fossil fuels is fast warming our planet. 2023 was the hottest year on record, and the first months of this year have continued to break records. Droughts and fires are more severe and more frequent, hurricane seasons longer and more destructive. Species, including humans, are fleeing places that are becoming uninhabitable. We humans are changing the planet in other ways too. To feed ourselves, we've converted 40% of land surface to grow food and raise livestock, and we've used half the planet's accessible fresh water, mostly to grow crops. We've cut down roughly half the tropical and temperate forests on the planet and dammed the majority of our rivers. Our activities are causing growing levels of pollution of our air, water, and land. Today, 1 million species are facing extinction, many within decades. How we are living is quite literally choking the life out of the planet. And while not a single person is insulated from the impacts, there is no greater injustice than the disproportionate ways in which these environmental changes affect vulnerable communities, mostly poor Black and brown communities, and the ways they will affect your generation and those that follow. By now, you might be wondering why anyone thought it was a good idea for me to come speak to you today. When I was in your seat, I was not thinking about these challenges. I was aware of many of them. Both my parents had dedicated their lives to public service and had recently immersed themselves in environmental issues. My mother talked to me regularly about what she was learning in bleak terms that made me angry. I would tell her she couldn't just tell me the world was going to hell in a handbasket. It was too depressing. But I can say something to you that she couldn't. Even as these problems have continued to worsen at an alarming pace, our scientific understanding of the problems and the number of solutions we now have at our fingertips has also grown dramatically. We now know so much more about everything. We understand the urgent need to transform how we live on this planet, from where our energy comes from and how we grow our food, to how we manufacture things and the materials we use, to how we design our cities, our homes, and our buildings. And we know that if we get it right, in creating a more livable planet, we can create a more equitable and just world. We can clean up our air and water, create more equitable housing and transportation, and shift how we invest our money and how we measure economic progress, so we're investing in things that make our planet and its people healthier, not sicker. This is a great backdrop as you enter your adult lives. I hope it will inform how you navigate the incredibly rich array of experiences and opportunities you have ahead of you. And I hope for your sake that yours will be a nonlinear path, as mine has been. I did not have a clue what I wanted to do when I was your age. It took me a long time to find out what I was truly passionate about and where I felt like I was actually making a difference. After working on a political campaign and then spending 2 years working in environmental advocacy, I made a pivot and went to business school because I thought learning more concrete skills would help me figure out what I wanted to do. When I got there, I was so far behind in my quantitative skills that I was forced to attend a math camp prior to the start of classes and was branded a poet because of my non-business background. During my second year, a classmate of mine came to me with the idea of starting an orthodontic technology company. Not in a million years would I have imagined doing such a thing, but it was a compelling idea, and I suppose I had never shaken my resentment of having spent nearly 4 years in braces. I didn't have any other plans and so agreed to join him. While today everyone and their cousin seems to want to start a company, back then we were the only ones in our class to take that plunge. The internet was still in its infancy. There was no Google, no social media apps, and even in Silicon Valley, everyone used flip phones. I know, can you imagine? I learned a huge amount and had the chance to work with a whole lot of talented people on building something together and doing something most people said couldn't be done. But eventually, startup challenges turned into big company challenges that I had neither the skill set nor the interest to manage. So I transitioned out and found myself in the familiar position of not knowing what I wanted to do next. It took me a few more years to start working on something that aligned what I cared about with where I was in my life. It happened after I became a mom and suddenly viewed our world's environmental challenges as a person whose number one job was to protect my children. I was sickened by everything I was learning about the climate crisis and decided to channel my sense of alarm and outrage into starting an organization called Mothers Out Front that mobilizes mothers into a powerful force capable of demanding climate justice solutions in their communities and beyond. Today, we have thousands of moms across the country working on campaigns that they initiate and drive. Some of them are stopping new fossil fuel projects from being built. Some are pushing for policies that support clean and renewable energy. Some are getting school districts to switch from dirty diesel buses to clean electric buses. It is a far cry from straightening teeth. The thing about life paths is that they're pretty great when they're winding, less like superhighways and more like meandering foot trails with chances to absorb, experience, think, and even take the occasional wrong turn and learn how to find your way back. And so as you take your next steps on your own life paths, I hope you will trust and enjoy the bends and the detours. And as you do, I invite you to consider the words of a celebrated Jewish sage, Rabbi Hillel, who lived 2,000 years ago, in the form of 3 simple questions. If I am not for myself, then who will be for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? The first question, if I am not for myself, then who will be for me, is an invitation to get to know yourself and to realize that your self-awareness is the root of your power and resilience. It is also what allows others in your life to know and support and love you. This question resonates with me because it's not one I ever considered at your age. In my family, the overwhelming focus was on making a difference in the world out there, not on getting to know oneself. I know that to get to where you are today, all of you have spent a lot of time doing what others have told you to do. You've checked a lot of boxes and stacked a lot of achievements. Now you get to figure out what you really care about. What do you love? What fills you with sadness? What fills you with outrage? What makes your heart sing? I hope you will pursue these questions with a sense of adventure and curiosity. Try new things, hopefully some of them uncomfortable. Make all kinds of friends. Take classes in subjects you might never have thought you'd be interested in. As a history and literature major, my favorite class turned out to be an evolutionary biology class where the professor brought to life the magic of the natural world through the study of ants. Shut out the voices telling you what you should do and all the expectations of what you should be. It took me years to figure out how to do that with any success, but it marked the beginning of the most rewarding chapters of my life. So I encourage you to start now. This is your time. Over time, you'll develop your sense of core values that will serve as your guideposts, and your life will be about the choices you make along the way. Hillel's second question, if I am only for myself, what am I, cautions us against living a selfish life. Moreover, it reminds us that we are social beings who thrive when we are in relationships with others. All of you who have benefited from being from the comfort of a loving family or group of friends, or been part of a great team, know how much this is true. We are buoyed by our connections with other human beings. We also need social connection and cooperation, to solve the complex challenges we face. At Mothers Out Front, recognizing this deep need for connection, we create ways for moms to come together to share their stories with one another. They have a chance to discover their shared values, and their sense of connection deepens their commitment both to each other and to the work they do together. We see time and again that our ability to connect with others opens up new opportunities to create change. Like when a group of climate activist moms met with a gas utility CEO. The moms had spent weeks tagging leaking gas pipes all across Boston with red flags and laminated signs to alert passersby to the failings of the gas utility to fix their underground pipes. In response, the CEO agreed to meet with a few of them to talk about the problem. The moms, who came prepared with a clear set of demands, opened the meeting by sharing stories about their kids and why they were doing this work. The CEO, who was taken aback by both the personal nature of the conversation and by the fact that he hadn't been immediately attacked, responded by talking about his kids. Instead of focusing on their differences, they focused first on their common concerns. And that created an opening for dialogue and collaboration. There isn't always an opportunity to find common ground, but if you lead with curiosity and respect and a healthy dose of humility, you can open up possibilities for connection that you never knew were there. Many of you will be entering college campuses where there is an enormous amount of strife, where there are students and even faculty staking out ideological positions and demonizing those they perceive to be on the wrong side, leaving little opportunity for people who disagree to actually talk to one another. Standing up and fighting for what you believe in is vitally important and takes courage. But it also takes courage to ask questions and to listen to and learn from people with different backgrounds and perspectives. The third question, if not now, then when, asks you to pay attention to what is happening and to be engaged. We all have agency in creating a better world, and you have more agency than most. You can start by voting this fall with the knowledge that our very democracy is on the line. You can get involved with your classmates in things that are happening on your college campus. Choose to approach your learning and your life choices as an actor, not a bystander, who gets to figure out your own path of choice and how you can play a role in creating a more just and livable world. You are graduating at a time of terrible realities, but it is also a time of transformative possibility. We're living in a moment that demands nothing less than a transformation of how we think about our relationships with one another and with the natural world. To achieve this, we must move with urgency to change so many of our existing systems. And because change is slow and hard, with powerful forces standing in its way, we need social movements. Such people-powered movements, usually with young people at the forefront, have been drivers of change in ways that once seemed impossible. Think women's suffrage, civil rights, abortion rights, marriage equality. And so we know the change we need is possible. This is a time for hope. Hope that is courageous because it means we don't accept the way things are. Hope that is rooted in the knowledge that we have so many of the solutions we need, and that people, by coming together with a shared purpose, have changed the world again and again. The world needs your leadership, but it is not your job to change the world tomorrow. That is the responsibility of all the other adults here today, to focus our remaining working years on doing all we can to make the world a little better for you and for the generations that follow. Your job now is to squeeze all you can out of this next chapter of life. Go learn as much as possible. Ask questions and develop your ability to think critically and with nuance. Discover your passions and indulge your curiosity. Create new relationships and community with people who you differ from. Find beauty and joy in the world because there is a lot of it to be found. And cherish special moments like this one. Most of all, learn what you believe strongly in and let those things guide you. Along the way, keep asking yourselves, what kind of a world do you want to be a part of? What choices will you make over the course of your lives to help create that future? Today, your journeys begin, and we can't wait to see what you do. Thank you.